The edge of the known world. The crisp morning air, usually a comforting embrace, felt charged with an unfamiliar electricity. Sarah stood on the porch, watching the rising sun paint streaks of apricot and rose across the eastern sky. This wasn't just another dawn, it was the dawn of her Rumspringa. A flutter, like a trapped bird, beat against her ribs, a blend of apprehension and an almost illicit thrill. Beyond the familiar fields, beyond the whispering woods, lay a world she'd only glimpsed in hushed whispers and fleeting encounters. Today, she would step into it. Inside, the scent of fresh-baked bread mingled with the quiet rustle of fabric. Leah, her older sister, knelt beside Sarah's small wooden chest, carefully folding a plain blue dress. Her movements were practiced, gentle. Leah's own Rumspringa had been 5 years ago, a distant memory now, wrapped in the comforting routines of married life. "Remember, the world out there, it's loud, Sarah," Leah said, her voice soft, almost a murmur. She smoothed a hand over the dress. "So many sounds, so many colors. Don't be afraid to just watch and listen." Sarah nodded, her throat suddenly tight. Did you like it, Leah?" Leah paused, a faint, wistful smile touching her lips. "It was different. I saw a building taller than our church steeple, taller than any tree, and the lights at night, like 1,000 fireflies caught in a jar." She packed a sturdy pair of shoes, worn but well-maintained. "But the best part, I think, was knowing I could always come home. That this," she gestured around the small, neat room, "this was waiting for me." Leah looked up, her eyes, the same warm brown as Sarah's, holding a deep understanding. "Don't forget that, little sister. Our love, it stretches farther than any road you'll travel." A lump formed in Sarah's throat. She wanted to ask more, to pry into Leah's experiences, but the unspoken message was clear. Some things were best discovered for oneself. She watched as Leah tucked a small, hand-embroidered sachet of lavender into the bag, a familiar scent to ward off unfamiliar anxieties. "Mama made sure you have enough clean bonnets," Leah added, a playful glint in her eyes. "And Papa polished your boots himself." That evening, the kitchen, usually a hub of quiet activity, felt unusually still. The aroma of roasted chicken and fresh-picked green beans filled the air, a final, comforting embrace from home. Sarah sat between her parents, her younger brothers and sisters across the table, their faces earnest and curious. The usual lively chatter was subdued, punctuated by the clinking of forks against plates. Papa, his beard neatly trimmed, offered a silent blessing before they began. Mama, her face serene beneath her white cap, served generous portions. "Eat well, Sarah," she said, her voice steady, though Sarah noticed the slight tremor in her hands as she refilled Papa's glass. "The journey will be long." Sarah tried to savor each bite, each familiar taste a reminder of the life she was temporarily leaving. She met her youngest brother, Daniel's wide-eyed gaze. He was only 5, too young to fully grasp the significance of her departure, but he seemed to sense the shift in the household's rhythm. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand, his small fingers surprisingly firm. Papa cleared his throat, a deep, resonant sound. "Remember what we've taught you, daughter. Hold fast to your faith. Observe, but do not be swayed by every novelty. Your heart knows the true path." He didn't look directly at her, instead focusing on a knot in the wooden table, but his words resonated with an authority that left no room for doubt. Sarah nodded, her own heart aching with a conflicting pull. She loved her family, loved this life, yet a fervent curiosity burned within her. She wanted to see the marvels Leah spoke of, to hear the clamor of the outside world, to understand what lay beyond the familiar horizon. The tension was palpable, a silent agreement that this was a necessary step, a test of faith and conviction. As the meal concluded, a hush fell over the room. Sarah rose, her legs feeling strangely light. She hugged Mama, inhaling the comforting scent of flour and sun-dried linen. Mama held her tight, a silent prayer whispered against Sarah's hair. Then Papa, his embrace strong and unyielding. "God go with you, Sarah," he murmured, his voice gruff with emotion. Her siblings gathered around, a tangle of small arms and earnest faces. Daniel clung to her skirt, his earlier boldness replaced by a sudden shyness. Sarah knelt, wrapping him in a hug. "Be good for Mama and Papa," she whispered, pressing a kiss to his soft hair. With her small carpet bag in hand, Sarah walked out onto the porch again. The sun had long since set, and the stars, like spilled diamonds, glittered in the inky sky. A horse and buggy waited at the edge of the lane, the air around it thick with expectation. Brother Jonas, a distant cousin who worked in the nearest English town, was her escort. He offered a small, reassuring smile. She took one last look at her home, the windows glowing softly with lamplight, a beacon of warmth and belonging. The familiar silhouette of the barn, the gentle rustle of leaves in the maple tree by the well, all imprinted themselves on her memory. This was the edge of her known world, and beyond it, a vast, uncharted territory awaited. The fear was still there, a whisper at the back of her mind, but the excitement had grown, blossoming into a defiant hope. She climbed into the buggy, the springs creaking under her weight, and with a gentle flick of the reins, Brother Jonas set them in motion, carrying her away from all she had ever known. A world of bright lights. The rhythmic clip-clop of a horse-drawn buggy was a memory now, replaced by the guttural rumble of metal and glass. Brother Jonas, his features unreadable, stowed Sarah's small trunk in the bus's underbelly before motioning her aboard. Inside, the air hung heavy with a cocktail of unfamiliar smells, stale coffee, synthetic cleaner, and a curious metallic tang. Sarah's gaze widened, tracing the rows of plush, high-backed seats, a stark contrast to her meeting-house's unyielding wooden benches. Each was claimed by a stranger, their faces illuminated by the hypnotic glow of individual screens, flickering with silent, inscrutable images. She gripped her satchel's strap, finding solace in the familiar weight of her Bible nestled within. Brother Jonas had indicated a window seat. As the bus lurched forward, severing ties with the quiet country road, Sarah pressed her face to the pane. Green fields and neat farmhouses swiftly dissolved into a riot of commercial signs, ablaze in aggressive reds, blues, and yellows. Neon, Brother Jonas had called it. It assaulted her senses, a vibrant din of light that made her eyes ache. Buildings speared the sky, their glass and steel facades mirroring the fleeting afternoon sun in a blinding mosaic. Cars, sleek and swift, zipped past, their engines a constant low thrum that resonated through the floor. The world outside the window spun at an unimaginable velocity, a relentless current of activity. The journey seemed endless, a dizzying plunge into the unknown. When the bus finally shuddered to a halt, the abrupt silence was almost as disorienting as the preceding clamor. "Kingston," a disembodied voice crackled over the speaker. "All out." Sarah rose, her legs stiff, her head swimming. The bus station unfolded as a cavernous expanse, a controlled maelstrom of rushing bodies and booming announcements. A vast illuminated board, a shifting grid of letters, displayed departure times for destinations she'd never heard of. Brother Jonas's instructions had been clear. Locate the information desk, inquire about Mrs. Miller's small guest house, and present the folded note he'd entrusted to her. But where was it? People surged past, their voices loud and urgent. A woman in tight trousers spoke animatedly into a small device at her ear. A man with tattooed arms hurried by, his gaze fixed on a glowing screen in his hand. A wave of panic washed over Sarah, a tightening in her chest. She was a solitary islet in a churning sea of strangers, each driven by their own purpose. She felt small, insignificant, and profoundly misplaced. Drawing a deep breath, Sarah recalled Dad's words. "Have faith, Sarah. The Lord will guide you." She steadied her gaze, scanning the periphery, searching for any recognizable marker. Finally, tucked away in a corner, she spotted a modest sign that read, "Information," albeit in a font far too elaborate for her taste. With renewed resolve, she navigated the throngs, murmuring apologies as she bumped shoulders. The woman at the counter, her hair a startling shade of purple, peered at Sarah over narrow spectacles. Sarah fumbled for the note, her cheeks flushing. I am Sarah Yoder, she began, her voice a bare whisper. Brother Jonas, he sent me. To Mrs. Miller's guest house? The woman's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Ah, the Amish girl, right. Mrs. Miller's place is a bit of a walk. Straight out the main doors, cross the square, and it's on Elm Street, number 7. Can't miss the blue door. She offered a quick, almost imperceptible smile. Welcome to Kingston, dear. Stepping out of the bus station was like entering a vibrant, living painting. The town square pulsed with an energy that vibrated through the soles of her plain black shoes. A fountain at its heart gushed water in elaborate arcs, its spray catching the artificial glow from storefronts. Music, loud and rhythmic, throbbed from somewhere, blending with children's laughter and murmured conversations. People relaxed on benches, absorbed in newspapers or sharing hushed secrets. A young man juggled glowing pins, captivating a small crowd with his artistry. The air carried the scent of popcorn and something sweet, like baked sugar. Sarah observed women in trousers and short skirts, men with bare arms adorned with intricate patterns. No bonnets, no plain dresses, no dark coats. Each person was distinct, unique, a vibrant tapestry of individuality. She clutched her satchel tighter, a nervous smile playing on her lips. It was overwhelming, yes, but undeniably exhilarating. A sense of wonder, sharp and sweet, unfurled in her chest. This was the world beyond her fences, the world Leah had whispered about, the world her parents had warned her against. And it was, in its own bewildering way, beautiful. She inhaled deeply, the foreign air filling her lungs, and began to walk, her eyes wide, her heart thrumming with hopeful, terrified anticipation. A scent of comfort. The pervasive aroma of warm, yeasty bread, a primal comfort far removed from the city's saccharine confections, was Sarah's anchor amidst the bewildering maelstrom of the town square. It spoke of hearth and home, though this one was entirely new. Following her nose, she discovered Rosie's Bake Shop, an unpretentious haven nestled between a garish electronics store and a bustling dry cleaner. A faded, hand-painted sign offered not only baked goods but also rooms to let above. With a hesitant push, Sarah opened the door, a cheerful bell announcing her arrival. A woman, apron dusted with flour, emerged from the back, her smile as warm as the air. "Can I help you, dear?" she inquired. I saw the sign. For a room?" Sarah's voice was a mere whisper against the bakery's low hum. Rosie's smile deepened. "Ah, yes. One left. Small, but clean. Shared bath, but quiet tenants." The room, perched directly above the bakery, indeed felt small, permeated by the subtle, comforting scent of baking. It contained a narrow cot, a simple wooden dresser, and a single window overlooking a cobbled alley. Cream-colored walls and a braided rug, a riot of muted hues, completed the Spartan yet familiar scene. "It's lovely," Sarah affirmed, a genuine smile gracing her lips. $8 a week, dear. Utilities included, but you'll need your own linens." Rosie's gaze was unreadable. "You're not from around here, are you?" Sarah paused. "No, ma'am. From Lancaster County." A flicker of understanding crossed Rosie's face. "Well, you're a long way from home, but you'll be safe. I keep a good house." A simple handshake and crisp bills from Brother Jonas secured Sarah's new abode. Ascending the narrow stairs, her satchel felt lighter. The room, a blank canvas of plain furniture, awaited. She unpacked her few possessions, a worn Bible, a small sewing kit, a carefully folded bonnet, and the plain dress she'd worn for days. The juxtaposition of her Amish simplicity within this modern city space felt acutely poignant. Dade's quilt, its familiar patterns a tangible piece of home, soon covered the cot. The window, despite its alley view, offered a sliver of sky. Leaning against the sill, she watched a cat stalk a pigeon on a dumpster. Not a field or a barn, but undeniably life. As the afternoon sun cast colors she rarely witnessed in her enclosed valley, Sarah ventured out, her destination simply around. Turning right from the bakery, she let curiosity be her guide. The street here was narrower than the square, a mosaic of small shops and residential buildings. A fruit stand overflowed with both familiar produce and exotic, vibrant mangoes and spiky durians. The air thrummed with a different energy than her quiet farm. Distant traffic, snatches of conversation, and the occasional burst of music from open windows. She passed a small park where children in brightly varied clothing chased each other around a metal climbing structure, their unrestrained laughter echoing off the surrounding buildings. Women in trousers, men with long hair, and people of every shade and size populated her vision, a kaleidoscope of humanity, far removed from her community's uniform simplicity. Their freedom of movement, their individual attire, both captivated and intimidated her. A young woman, no older than Sarah, sat on a bench, head bowed over a book, wire-rimmed glasses perched on her nose. Her denim jacket was a tapestry of colorful embroidered patches. Sarah paused, a silent observer. The woman looked up, met Sarah's gaze, and offered a shy, small smile before returning to her reading. Sarah's heart gave a little flutter. It was a fleeting, inconsequential interaction for the woman, but for Sarah, a connection, a shared moment in this bewildering city. The world, she realized, was not just loud and overwhelming, it was also filled with quiet moments and unexpected kindnesses, and the comforting scent of Rosie's bread still clung to her clothes, a subtle reminder of her new, simple haven. Books and quiet work. The scent of old paper and dust motes dancing in sunbeams filled Sarah with an unexpected tranquility. Rosie had, true to her word, asked around. It turned out the city library, a grand, slightly crumbling edifice of red brick just a few blocks from the bake shop, was in need of a part-time assistant. Sarah, despite her limited formal schooling, had always loved books. The worn spines of her family's German Bibles and hymnals held a special reverence for her. This, however, was an entirely different universe. Her interview with Mrs. Gable, the head librarian, was a quiet affair. Mrs. Gable, a woman with silver hair pulled into a neat bun and spectacles perched on her nose, had a surprisingly kind smile. "No experience?" she'd asked, peering over her glasses. Sarah had shaken her head, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "No, ma'am, not with a library." "Can you dust?" "Yes, ma'am." "Are you reliable?" "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Gable had nodded slowly, a thoughtful hum escaping her lips. "Good enough for a start. We'll show you the rest." And so, Sarah found herself amidst towering shelves and hushed whispers, a feather duster becoming an extension of her arm. The initial days were a blur of learning. She learned the rhythmic sweep necessary to dislodge dust from hundreds of titles, the gentle wipe to clean the polished oak surfaces. There was a system to everything. Mrs. Gable patiently explained the Dewey Decimal System, a concept as foreign and intricate as the city's subway lines. Each number, each section, represented a category of knowledge Sarah had barely conceived of before. Fiction, nonfiction, biography, history, science. The words were becoming anchors in a sea of new information. Her colleagues were a varied lot. There was Paul, a young man with an encyclopedic knowledge of graphic novels, who often hummed quietly as he restocked shelves. He had a habit of offering Sarah a shy, almost imperceptible nod when their paths crossed. And then there was Clara, a woman Sarah's age with bright, inquisitive eyes and a penchant for wearing colorful scarves. Clara worked the circulation desk, her fingers flying over the computer keyboard, scanning books in and out with practiced ease. "Don't worry about the computer yet," Clara had said on Sarah's second day, noticing her fascinated gaze. "You'll get there. For now, mastering the F section is triumph enough." She'd winked, making Sarah's lips twitch into a small, unfamiliar smile. The F section, for fiction, was indeed a challenge. So many stories, so many authors. Sarah would often pause, duster poised, to read a title, a brief synopsis on the back cover. She discovered tales of romance, adventure, and mystery, worlds unfolding in just a few lines. Sometimes a patron would approach her, a question hanging in the air. "Excuse me," a woman with a gentle voice asked one afternoon, her finger hovering over a shelf. "Do you know where the new historical fiction is?" Sarah's heart gave a little lurch. This was her first direct interaction with a patron. She swallowed, remembering Mrs. Gable's instructions. "Let me see, ma'am." She scanned the shelf, her brow furrowed in concentration. She knew the general area, but "new" was a qualifier she hadn't yet fully grasped. She looked up, her gaze meeting the woman's. "I am learning the system. If you could give me a moment, I can ask someone who knows for certain." The woman smiled kindly. "Of course, dear. Take your time." Sarah felt a flush creep up her neck, but also a surge of quiet determination. She walked over to Clara, who was scanning a stack of returns. "Clara, please, the new historical fiction section?" Clara pointed with her chin. "Over by the tall window, end of the aisle. We just got a shipment yesterday." Sarah nodded her thanks and returned to the patron, directing her with a newfound confidence. "It's over there, by the tall window." "Thank you so much," the woman said, her voice warm. "You're very helpful." A warmth spread through Sarah's chest. It was a small thing, a simple direction, but the act of being helpful, of contributing, felt deeply satisfying. The library was a place of quiet industry, of shared knowledge, and, to Sarah's surprise, a place where she was beginning to feel a sense of belonging. The scent of old paper and quiet work was becoming a new kind of home. Each day brought a new book title, a new genre, a new face. It was a slow unfolding, but Sarah felt herself unfurling with it, like a tightly bound bud finally exposed to the sun. A helping hand. The city breathed a different rhythm on rainy days, a muted hum under the drumming of water on pavement and glass. Inside the library, the usual bustle softened into a gentle rustle of turning pages and hushed conversations. Sarah found a particular comfort in these afternoons, the world outside a blur of gray and green, while inside, the warmth of the old building enveloped her. She was dusting the history section, a task she'd grown fond of, running her cloth over the spines of books that held centuries of stories. A man entered, shaking a fine mist from a dark umbrella before carefully placing it in the stand by the door. He was quiet, his movements deliberate. Sarah noticed him because he didn't immediately gravitate towards the computers or the new releases, but rather paused, taking in the grand, vaulted space with an air of thoughtful observation. His hair was a warm brown, a few strands falling across his forehead, and his eyes, when he finally looked up and met hers across the room, were a calm, steady gray. He offered a small, polite nod, and Sarah, a faint blush warming her cheeks, returned it. He made his way to the reference desk, and Clara, who was on duty, greeted him with a bright smile. Sarah watched from behind a towering shelf of biographies as they spoke in low tones. She heard snippets, old maps, cartography, historical atlases. It sounded like a treasure hunt, and Sarah felt a familiar spark of curiosity. She was learning to embrace these small fascinations, the little windows into worlds she hadn't known existed. Later, Sarah was struggling with a cart overflowing with recently returned books. The last few were for a high shelf in the literature section, a spot just beyond her comfortable reach. She stretched, her fingers brushing the spine of a worn copy of Moby Dick, but couldn't quite grasp it securely. She bounced on the balls of her feet, a silent grunt of effort escaping her lips. A shadow fell over her. She turned, startled, to find the quiet man from earlier standing beside her. He held a large, leather-bound book in his hand, a map of some ancient land visible on its open page. His presence was not intrusive, merely attentive. "Need a hand?" His voice was soft, a low rumble, entirely free of judgment or pity. Sarah felt a rush of heat to her face. "Oh, yes, please. These ones go up there." She gestured to the empty space on the top shelf, a small smile playing on her lips, grateful for the unexpected offer. He set his book down on a nearby table, careful not to disturb the pages. Then, with an easy reach, he took the books from her. His hands were strong, his movements efficient. In moments, the books were neatly tucked into their designated spots. He didn't linger, didn't make a show of it, simply performed the task and then turned back to his own book. "Thank you," Sarah said, genuinely relieved. "I always struggle with that shelf." He picked up his atlas, his fingers tracing a line on the old map. "Some of the best ones are often just out of reach, aren't they?" He offered a small, knowing smile, his gray eyes crinkling at the corners. It wasn't a flirtatious smile, but a gentle, shared understanding. Sarah found herself smiling back, a little wider than she intended. "Indeed. Are you finding what you need?" She nodded towards the impressive book in his hands. "I believe so," he said, his gaze returning to the map. "It's a fascinating world, isn't it? The way people imagined places before they truly knew them." He looked up at her again, a spark of genuine enthusiasm in his eyes. "This one, for example, shows terra incognita, unknown land, in such detail, as if it were fact." Sarah peered at the intricate drawing. "It looks mystical." "It is," he agreed, a thoughtful hum escaping him. "A blend of geography and imagination. Much like stories, I suppose." "I suppose so," Sarah echoed, captivated by the conversation, by the quiet intensity of his interest. The rain continued its steady patter outside, but inside, a different kind of connection was beginning to unfurl, as gentle and steady as the falling drops. She felt a lightness in her chest, a pleasant hum. He hadn't asked about her accent, hadn't stared at her simple dress. He had simply seen her and helped. Talks of stars and stories. The scent of old paper and dust had become a comforting constant for Sarah, a familiar backdrop to her days at the library. After their brief exchange about uncharted territories, David's visits transformed from simple occurrences into anticipated events. He would often gravitate towards the history section, sometimes pausing by the display of newly acquired books, his gaze thoughtful and unhurried. Sarah found herself subtly adjusting her dusting route, her tasks magically drawing her closer to his usual haunts. One crisp afternoon, with autumn leaves skittering across the library windows, David found her reshelving a stack of historical fiction. "You seem to know these stories well," he remarked, his voice a low, pleasant murmur, as she expertly slid a thick tome back into its place. Sarah smoothed her apron, a faint blush warming her cheeks. "Some of them, yes. I find myself drawn to the ones where people discover new things, or build new lives." She gestured vaguely at the shelves around them. "Like the explorers, or the ones who settled in faraway lands." David picked up a slim volume on astronomy, its cover depicting a swirling galaxy. "And the stars? Do they hold stories for you too?" Sarah's eyes lit up. "Oh, yes. My dad used to tell me about the constellations, how the ancients saw figures and heroes in the sky. He taught me to find the Big Dipper and the North Star." She paused, a nostalgic smile playing on her lips. "It's different here, with all the city lights, but sometimes if I walk far enough from the street lights, I can still see them, just a little." David listened, his gaze steady and attentive. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer a quick response, but simply absorbed her words. It was a rare and precious feeling for Sarah, to speak so freely about something personal and have it received with such quiet respect. "It's easy to forget, with all the human noise, that there's a universe above us, constantly unfolding," he said, his voice soft. "But the stories we tell about it, the way we try to understand it, that's what makes us human, isn't it?" Their conversations often unfolded like this, meandering from the practicalities of library work to the grander narratives held within its walls. They spoke of the quiet heroism of librarians, the power of words, and the simple beauty of a well-told tale. Sarah learned that David was a cartographer, and he spoke of maps not just as tools for navigation, but as records of human curiosity, ambition, and the ever-changing face of the earth. He even confessed a childhood fascination with fantastical maps, those depicting mythical kingdoms and impossible voyages. Sarah, in turn, found herself sharing more about her own world, careful not to reveal too much, but eager to convey the richness of her upbringing. She spoke of quilting bees and barn raisings, of the rhythm of seasons dictating life's pace, and the deep sense of community that bound her family together. David didn't pry or judge, but asked questions that showed genuine interest, questions that made her feel understood rather than scrutinized. One afternoon, a particularly tricky old atlas, its binding cracked and pages fragile, needed to be returned to a high shelf. Sarah, even on her tiptoes, couldn't quite reach. David, noticing her predicament, stepped forward. He reached up, his hand steady as he guided the heavy book into its slot. As his arm lowered, his gaze met hers. "You have a way of seeing the beauty in things, Sarah," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Even in dusty old books and distant stars." It wasn't a compliment about her appearance, nor about her work. It was a recognition of something deeper, a part of her spirit she rarely shared, even with herself. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the library, the comforting scent of aged paper, and the gentle sincerity in his eyes, Sarah felt a profound shift. It was as if a hidden door within her had been quietly unlatched, and for the first time, she felt truly seen. Not as a new girl from a different world, not as a library assistant, but simply as Sarah, with her own unique way of looking at the world. A warmth bloomed in her chest, a feeling as vast and luminous as the night sky. She found herself smiling, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached her eyes. New rhythms. The brassy clang of a distant trumpet, followed by a rhythmic thrum that vibrated through the very pavement, caught Sarah's attention as she walked home from the library one Tuesday. It was a sound unlike any she'd ever encountered, far too robust for a hymn, too organized for street noise. David appeared beside her, his presence a comforting anchor in the city's swirling currents. "They're playing in the park," he said, nodding towards a patch of green a block away. "A local band, folk mostly." Sarah's brow furrowed. "Playing?" He smiled, a gentle crinkling at the corners of his eyes. "Music, with instruments, if you'd like to hear." A nervous flutter stirred in her stomach. Her community's singing was unaccompanied, a pure, unadorned offering. The thought of instruments, of organized sound beyond the human voice, was both daunting and deeply intriguing. "Is it allowed?" David's smile widened, a quiet reassurance. "Here it is. There's no harm in listening, Sarah." He led her to the edge of the small park, a vibrant rectangle of manicured grass and mature oak trees. A cluster of people had gathered, some seated on blankets, others standing, swaying subtly. On a raised, makeshift stage, 4 men and a woman held instruments Sarah had only seen in pictures. A gleaming trumpet, a cello whose rich wood gleamed in the late afternoon sun, a guitar, and a drum set. When they launched into their next piece, a cascade of notes erupted, a dizzying blend of melancholy and exuberance. The sound enveloped Sarah, a physical presence that vibrated in her chest. The melody twisted and turned, soaring with the trumpet's clear voice, deepening with the cello's resonant hum, punctuated by the sharp crack of the snare drum. Her senses were overwhelmed. The scent of cut grass mingled with popcorn from a nearby vendor. The warmth of the sun on her face contrasted with the cool breeze rustling the leaves. But it was the music that truly held her captive. It wasn't just noise. It was a story told without words, a tapestry of emotions she could almost taste. She found herself tapping her foot, a small, involuntary movement. A laugh bubbled up, light and unexpected, as a quick, jaunty tune made her want to spin. David watched her, a quiet contentment in his eyes. He didn't try to explain or interpret, he simply allowed her to experience it, to absorb the newness without judgment or expectation. His presence beside her was a silent permission, a gentle invitation to explore. When the set ended, a wave of applause rippled through the crowd, and Sarah clapped too, her palms tingling. She felt lighter somehow, as if the music had lifted a small burden she hadn't even realized she carried. "That was astonishing," she breathed, turning to David. Her voice was a little hoarse. "Like 100 different feelings all at once, and the way they fit together." He nodded. "That's what good music does. It creates something new from disparate parts." They walked slowly away from the dispersing crowd, the faint echoes of the last song still humming in her ears. "In my community, we sing only hymns," she explained, picturing the quiet, reverent gatherings in the meeting house. "No instruments, only voices raised in praise." "And that's beautiful in its own way," David said, his tone devoid of comparison or criticism. "But there's a different kind of beauty in this too, isn't there? In the way different sounds can combine to create something bigger than themselves." Sarah considered his words. She thought of the library, of how stories from different authors, different eras, different worlds, all resided under one roof, creating a vast, interconnected tapestry of human experience. And she thought of herself, Sarah Yoder, once confined to a quiet, predictable pattern, now encountering a world teeming with new rhythms and unexpected harmonies. "It feels freeing," she confessed, meeting his gaze. A blush crept up her neck, but she didn't look away. "Like there's more space in the world than I knew, more ways to feel, more ways to understand." David's hand brushed hers, a brief, electrifying contact that sent a shiver through her. "There is, Sarah," he said softly, "so much more." The simple affirmation, spoken with such quiet conviction, felt like a promise of continued discovery, of shared moments, of a world still unfurling before them, vibrant and full of unheard melodies. Worlds unveiled. The city lights, once a distant, shimmering promise, now embraced Sarah and David as they strolled from the park. The cello's melancholic strains still echoed in her mind, a new sort of melody weaving through the familiar hymns of her upbringing. Sensing her quiet reverie, David steered them down a less trodden path, the rhythmic scuff of their shoes on the gravel providing the only punctuation to the evening's unfolding. "That was unexpected," Sarah murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "I've never encountered music quite like it. No lyrics, just raw emotion." David offered a slow, gentle smile that reached the depths of his eyes. "Instrumental pieces hold a unique power, don't they? They invite you to paint your own narrative with sound." He paused, then added, "Quite a departure from your usual, I imagine." A shy smile touched Sarah's lips as she nodded. "Indeed, in our community music serves devotion, praise alone, always voices. Instruments are regarded as ostentatious." She hesitated, then a surprising urge to confide spurred her onward. "My family, we mostly sing German hymns. We don't have radios or phonographs, so to experience a live band in the park, it was truly something." David listened with an unwavering gaze, his expression steady and warm. He offered no interruptions, no judgments, no exclamations of surprise. When she finished, he simply observed, "It sounds like a deeply interconnected community, rich in tradition." "It is," Sarah confirmed, a wave of relief washing over her that her disclosures hadn't met the familiar pity or bewilderment. "We live plainly. No electricity, no automobiles. We cultivate the land, raising our children according to the customs of our forefathers." She found herself gesturing, illustrating the vast cornfields stretching behind her childhood home, recalling the faint scent of fresh hay in summer, the distinctive clatter of horse-drawn buggies on dusty roads. "My father, "A carpenter. My mother, she tends the garden and stitches for the family. We labor in unity. It's tranquil in its own way." "And you assisted on the farm?" David inquired, his tone imbued with genuine curiosity. "Oh yes, from my earliest years. Milking cows, gathering eggs, helping with the harvest," she recounted, a wistful smile playing on her lips. "There's an inherent rhythm to it, you see. The seasons dictate everything. Planting, nurturing, gathering. It's demanding labor, but there's an immense satisfaction in witnessing the fruits of your efforts." She glanced at him, searching for any hint of mockery, but found only a pensive expression. "It sounds like a life where purpose is exceptionally clear," he reflected, "where everyone has a defined role." "That's true," she agreed. "Every individual contributes. There's a profound sense of belonging." She pictured the Sunday gatherings, the shared meals, the comforting drone of low German conversations. When assistance is needed, the entire community rallies for a barn raising, or if someone falls ill. David nodded slowly. "That's something many urban dwellers yearn for, I believe, that steadfast network of support." He paused, then asked, "What about books? Did you have many in your home?" Sarah's eyes brightened. "We had the Bible, naturally, and a few hymnals, but my favorites were the nature guides. I adored learning about the birds that frequented our garden, the diverse trees in the nearby woods, and stories, too. Simple tales, often with a moral lesson." She remembered clandestinely reading a well-worn children's book under her mattress by the faint glow of a lantern, long after her sisters had drifted to sleep. "That's one of the things I cherish about the library here. So many books, so many different universes." David's smile broadened this time. "Indeed, worlds unveiled." He turned down a quiet residential street, the lamplight casting attenuated shadows. "It sounds like a life of deep intrinsic connection, Sarah, to the earth, to kin, to faith. It's something to be profoundly proud of." His words, unadorned and heartfelt, resonated deeply within her. She had often felt a quiet shame about her origins when others questioned them, a sense of being an outsider. But David's easy acceptance, his genuine engagement, made her feel comprehended, perhaps for the first time since she'd left home. It was as if he saw not an oddity, but a person with a rich and distinctive history, worthy of respect. The city still held its intimidating enigmas, but with David at her side, sharing these fragments of her past, it felt a little less daunting, a little more welcoming. A heart's warmth. The ensuing days unfolded as a mosaic of shared moments, each one cementing the invisible bond between them. Lunch breaks frequently lengthened into spontaneous explorations, the city's verdant pockets becoming their preferred havens. David initiated Sarah into the simple delight of a picnic, unfurling a well-used plaid blanket beneath an ancient oak by the river. The water's gentle murmuring provided a serene counterpoint to the city's distant hum as he meticulously arranged an assortment of sandwiches and fruit, never forgetting the apple slices Sarah particularly enjoyed. In return, Sarah introduced him to the intricate beauty of traditional Amish quilt blocks, sketching patterns in the dirt with a twig, utterly captivating his attention. She also taught him a memory and quick thinking game from her childhood, played with pebbles arranged in circles and lines. Unburdened laughter became a frequent companion, reverberating between them, whether David stumbled through the pebble game or Sarah comically mistook a blustery pigeon for a city chicken. One sun-dappled afternoon by the river, David produced a small, flat wooden puzzle from his bag, a labyrinth of interlocking pieces designed to form a perfect cube. He watched, an amused glint in his eyes, as Sarah, with her characteristic quiet resolve, manipulated the pieces. Her brow furrowed in concentration, her fingers, accustomed to the tactile work of fabric and dough, moved with surprising agility. He offered no guidance, simply observing her methodical process. When, after several minutes, the final piece clicked into place, forming a flawless cube, a triumphant, unself-conscious smile blossomed on her face. It was a smile he found himself anticipating more and more. It was during one of these companionable silences, the river flowing with placid grace, the city a distant, gentle thrum, that Sarah experienced a profound internal shift. David was meticulously explaining the subtle differences in a particular map projection, his voice a low, steady cadence. She didn't absorb every technical nuance, but she listened intently, not just to his words, but to the quiet passion in his tone, the way his eyes ignited when he spoke of the Earth's curvature. A warmth, unlike any she had ever encountered, began to unfurl in her chest. It wasn't the comforting heat of a kitchen stove on a crisp morning, nor the communal warmth of a crowded buggy. This was an interior radiance, gentle yet persistent, emanating outward from her heart. It was a sensation of deep contentment, of being utterly at ease, completely understood. The realization struck her with a jolt, both startling and exhilarating. This warmth, this profound sense of connection, was for David. The insight settled over her like a soft, comforting shawl. She had always conceived of love in terms of duty and shared purpose, as defined by her community. This, however, was something distinct, a delicate, personal affection that resonated deeply within her spirit, making the world around her seem brighter, more vibrant. Later that week, as dusk painted the library windows in hues of orange and purple, David walked her to the bus stop. The air was cool, carrying the faint promise of rain. They stood beneath the awning, streetlights casting elongated shadows. Sarah felt an unusual reluctance for the moment to conclude, a desire to prolong the lingering warmth of his presence. I enjoyed today," she murmured, her voice a little softer than usual, the words feeling utterly inadequate for the fullness in her heart. David turned to her, his gaze steady and kind. He offered no spoken reply, but his slight smile, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners, conveyed volumes. He reached out, his hand gently enveloping hers. His touch was feather-light, almost imperceptible, yet it sent a delightful shiver through her, a pleasant current that solidified the warmth in her heart. He didn't squeeze, didn't hold tight, simply rested his palm against hers for a fleeting moment before releasing it. It was a gesture of quiet understanding, a silent acknowledgement of their nascent connection. As the bus pulled up, Sarah stepped aboard, her hand still tingling from his touch. The city lights blurred outside the window, yet her focus remained inward, on the vivid, blossoming warmth that now resided firmly in her chest. A warmth that promised new beginnings, and perhaps a new path she had never before envisioned. The looming choice. The crisp autumn air, once a invigorating balm, now carried a melancholic chill that seeped into Sarah's very bones. Each turning leaf, each shortening day, felt like a visible countdown to the end of her Rumspringa. The simple joys she'd once found, the fiery hues of a city sunset, the comforting murmur of the library, David's steadfast presence, were increasingly eclipsed by a pervasive sadness. She'd catch herself watching children at play, a pang of longing for a life she barely remembered, a life she knew she would soon have to embrace or relinquish. This realization was a heavy stone in her chest, constricting her breath. One overcast afternoon, perched on a park bench as a lone squirrel frenetically buried an acorn, Sarah's usual composure frayed. She picked at a loose thread on her dress, her gaze distant, fixed on nothing. The laughter of distant picnickers, typically a pleasant background hum, now felt like a taunt. David, ever perceptive, sensed the shift in her. He gently covered her hand with his, a silent query in the warmth of his touch. "You seem troubled, Sarah," he murmured, his voice a soft, comforting rumble that usually assuaged her. Today it only deepened the ache. "Is there something weighing on your mind?" The directness of his question, coupled with the gentle pressure of his hand, breached her carefully constructed defenses. Her eyes welled, blurring the already muted greens and browns of the park. She blinked rapidly, struggling to regain control, embarrassed by the sudden surge of emotion. "It's my time here," she began, her voice a fragile whisper. "It's ending soon." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken significance. David squeezed her hand reassuringly. "I know," he said, his gaze unwavering, full of an understanding that transcended words. "It's a monumental decision, isn't it?" Sarah nodded, a tear finally escaping and tracing a cool path down her cheek. "Bigger than I ever imagined," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I arrived here thinking I knew what I wanted. To experience the world, yes, but always with the clear intention of returning. To my family, to my community. That's what's expected." She paused, struggling to articulate the profound internal shift. "My parents, they've already made arrangements for me to marry Levi. He's a good man, dependable. We grew up together. It's a suitable match, everyone says." She looked at David, her eyes pleading for him to grasp the invisible chains that bound her. "My family anticipates my return, my baptism, the start of my life there." David listened patiently, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply absorbed her words, his expression solemn, his eyes reflecting a quiet empathy. "And now?" he prompted softly, granting her the space to fully unburden her heart. "And now," Sarah took a shaky breath, "now it feels different. The world here, it's so much more expansive than I ever envisioned. And the people." Her gaze met his, and in that moment, the depth of her unspoken feelings for him pulsed between them, undeniable and overwhelming. "I've learned so much. I've felt emotions I didn't know existed. I found a sense of purpose in my work at the library, and I found you." A fresh wave of tears spilled over. "How can I go back?" she whispered, the question a raw cry of anguish. "How can I choose one life when a part of me belongs in both? Or if it means leaving behind a part of myself I've only just discovered?" Her voice was choked with emotion, the weight of the looming choice pressing down with an unbearable force. She knew, with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified her, that her heart no longer resided solely in the quiet fields of her upbringing. It had found new roots, intertwined with the city's vibrant pulse, and more profoundly, with the gentle soul beside her. A promise of love. The city lights streaked past, a watercolor blur as the taxi navigated the labyrinthine evening streets. Each turn drew Sarah closer to her apartment, to the precipice of an inevitable decision. Beside her, David's presence was a familiar comfort in the cramped space, yet it also underscored the widening chasm between them. The air thrummed with unspoken sentiments, a tension both exquisite and agonizing. His fingers found hers, a simple intertwining of hands that spoke volumes. His touch, usually so reassuring, now trembled with barely contained emotion. Sarah's breath hitched. She truly looked at him, absorbing the raw vulnerability in his eyes, a depth of feeling she hadn't quite anticipated. "Sarah," he began, his voice a low, steady current, "I've tried to imagine what this must be like for you. The choices you face?" He paused, his gaze unwavering, searching for precisely the right words. "I know I'm asking you to consider a life you never envisioned, a path far removed from everything you've ever known." A tear slipped from Sarah's eye, unnoticed until its salty track reached her lip, a taste of sorrow. "It's not just a life, David. It's my family, my community, my faith." He offered a slow nod, acknowledging the immense weight of her conviction. "I understand, and I would never ask you to compromise that, Sarah. Not genuinely." He squeezed her hand, his thumb tracing delicate patterns on her skin. "But I have to tell you something essential." His eyes locked with hers, a deep, unwavering gaze that seemed to strip away all defenses, all fear. "I love you, Sarah. I have for a while now. I love your quiet strength, your boundless curiosity, the way you perceive the world with such clarity and compassion." His voice softened further, imbued with a profound sincerity that resonated deep within her. I love the way you make me see things differently, too. The way you make me feel truly alive." The confession hung in the air, a delicate, incandescent moth drawn to a flame. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, a wild bird suddenly unfettered. She had suspected, even hoped, but to hear it articulated with such unvarnished honesty was overwhelming. Tears now flowed freely, not solely of sadness, but of a joy so intense it bordered on pain. "And whatever you choose," he continued, his voice steady despite the visible emotion etched on his face, "whether you remain here or return home, I will always honor it, always, because your happiness, your true peace, is what matters most to me, even if that means my heart aches for you from afar." The quiet strength of his promise, the profound selflessness of his love, broke something open within her. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder, letting the warmth of his presence permeate her. His arm encircled her, drawing her close in a silent embrace that spoke volumes. In that moment, amidst the dizzying blur of the city, she felt anchored, a profound connection transcending the physical. It was a shared vulnerability, a sacred space where two souls met, utterly exposed and utterly accepted. They remained like that, allowing the taxi to carry them through the dwindling distance, each breath a silent supplication, each beat of their hearts a testament to the impossible, beautiful love that had blossomed between them. The taxi pulled up to her building, the abrupt halt a jolt that fractured the intimacy, replacing it with the stark reality of impending separation. They stepped onto the sidewalk, the evening's chill a sharp contrast to the warmth they had shared. At her door, they faced each other, the final farewell looming. Her eyes, still glistening, met his. "David," she whispered, her voice thick with unshed emotion. I don't know what to say." He offered a small, melancholic smile. "You don't have to say anything, Sarah. Not now. Just know that you've changed my world, and I'm eternally grateful for every moment we've had." He reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands, his thumbs caressing her cheeks. "Be safe. Be true to yourself, Sarah. That's all I ask." He leaned in, and for a fleeting instant their lips met. It was a tender, chaste kiss, a promise, a farewell, and a silent plea all intertwined. The touch lingered, a bittersweet imprint Sarah knew would stay with her long after he was gone. Then, with a final, lingering look, he turned and melted into the neon-tinged shadows of the city street. Sarah watched him go, a profound ache settling in her chest. The door to her apartment felt impossibly heavy, the key cold in her hand. Her Rumspringa was ending, and with it, perhaps, a part of her heart. Between two worlds. The familiar essence of damp earth and freshly turned soil enveloped Sarah even before the buggy's rattle ceased at the lane's final bend. This fragrance, long a signature of home, a comforting shroud of belonging, now carried a faint echo of something new. The sharp tang of exhaust she'd grown accustomed to, the subtle perfume of city rain. The fields, a vibrant mosaic of greens and browns, unfurled under a sky that felt impossibly vast and still after the city's ceaseless hum. Everything was simultaneously identical and profoundly altered, filtered through the prism of her Rumspringa. Her father, Jacob, a man of quiet strength whose gaze softened only for her, stood by the barn. His hand, calloused by years of toil, reached to steady the buggy as she descended. His smile was a warm balm, reflecting not judgment, but boundless affection. Hannah, her mother, her face gently etched with a lifetime of sun and laughter, embraced her in a hug redolent of flower and lavender. "My Sarah," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're home." The house hummed with gentle activity. Her younger siblings, Elam and Rebecca, approached shyly, their eyes wide with curiosity. Rebecca clutched a cornhusk doll, her gaze lingering on Sarah's slightly altered appearance. Her simple dress and shawl, though muted in tone, were not Amish. The kitchen, usually bustling, seemed to hold its breath as Sarah entered. Plates of her favorite apple fritters, still warm, awaited on the pine table, a silent, fragrant offering of welcome. Over the next few days, the rhythms of farm life sought to reassert their hold. Sarah milked cows at dawn, the familiar rhythmic tug of the udder a physical anchor. She assisted her mother in the garden, feeling the cool soil yield beneath her fingers as she weeded rows of beans. She baked bread, its yeasty aroma filling the kitchen, a scent she'd craved in the sterile confinement of her apartment. Each chore was a step back into a life she knew intimately, a life ingrained in her very being. Yet, with every familiar action, another memory surfaced. David's quiet chuckle as he guided her through the subway's labyrinth, the hushed reverence of the library, the exhilarating rush of discovering a new book. Her family, sensing the subtle shift within her, spoke in gentle inquiries, never pressing, always inviting. "Did you see many English books, Sarah?" Elam asked one evening, his voice barely a whisper, as they swayed on the porch swing. "So many, Elam," she replied, envisioning the towering shelves, thousands upon thousands. Her mother, kneading dough for supper rolls, offered, "The city must be a noisy place, after all this quiet." "It is," Sarah admitted, a faint smile touching her lips. "But there's a beauty to it, too, a different kind of song." Her father, usually reserved, spoke of the harvest, of the changing seasons, subtly reminding her of their lives' enduring cycle. He spoke of community, of shared burdens and shared joys. He didn't need to articulate the words. His meaning was clear. "This is your place, Sarah. We want you here." The weight of her decision pressed down like the imminent winter snows. She walked the familiar paths of their farm, her gaze sweeping across the fields, the sturdy barn, the creek winding through the pasture. Each landmark held a lifetime of belonging, of love, of deep-seated memories. Here, she was Sarah Yoder, daughter of Jacob and Hannah, sister to Elam and Rebecca, a cherished member of her community. She knew her role, understood her purpose, and was loved unconditionally. But then, the wind would whisper David's name, and she'd see his earnest eyes, feel the phantom warmth of his hand in hers. She'd remember the way he listened, truly listened, the way he saw her, not just an Amish girl, but Sarah, with her boundless curiosity and her budding dreams. She thought of the library, a sanctuary where knowledge flowed freely, where stories unfolded without judgment. She thought of the maps David sketched, each line a promise of discovery, a new world waiting to be explored. She spent a week suspended in this liminal space, caught between two worlds. Her days were filled with chores, her nights with restless contemplation and silent prayer. She prayed for guidance, for clarity, for a way to bridge the impossible chasm that had opened in her heart. She prayed for her family, for David, and for herself, a young woman now standing at a crossroads, knowing that whichever path she chose, a part of her would always ache for the other. The comfort of home was an undeniable pull, but the quiet, persistent voice of her heart, now awakened to a different kind of love, sang a new, complicated melody. The path chosen. The rich scent of freshly tilled earth, usually a soothing balm, felt heavy today, clinging to Sarah like a damp shroud. Golden afternoon light stretched across the Yoder farm, catching dancing dust motes in the warm kitchen air as Sarah assisted her ma'am with supper. The rhythmic thud of the chopping knife against the worn wood board provided the only sound for a long while, each strike amplifying the nervous beat in Sarah's own chest. Finally, she drew a shaky breath. "Ma'am, Dad," she began, her voice a reedy whisper that nonetheless seemed to reverberate in the quiet room. Her parents looked up, their expressions etched with the gentle concern she knew she had put there. I have something to tell you." Her dad nodded, his kind eyes unwavering. "We are listening, Sarah May." Haltingly at first, then with a surge of newfound resolve, she recounted her time in the city. She spoke of the library, the boundless world within books, the sheer joy of discovery, and the unexpected bonds she'd forged. She described the sensation of contributing, of being valued for her intellect, not merely her labor. Then, she spoke of David. She told them about his quiet strength, his profound understanding, the way he truly saw her, past the plain dress and the Amish upbringing. She spoke of shared maps, shared dreams, their laughter, and the deep, blossoming connection between them. A profound stillness settled over the kitchen. Her mam's hands, typically in motion, lay idle on the table. Tears welled in her eyes, devoid of anger, a deep, quiet sorrow. "Ugh, Sarah," her mam murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "We knew. We feared this, child. The city changes people." "It did change me, ma'am," Sarah admitted, her own voice cracking. "But it showed me who I could be, who I want to be." She reached across the table, taking her mam's hand, then her dad's. "I love you both. I cherish our life here, but my heart has found a home in a different place, with David." Her dad's gaze, though pained, remained steady. "This means you will not return to the fold, Sarah?" His question was gentle, yet it carried the weight of a final judgment, a rending of their familial cloth. Sarah's throat tightened. The words were difficult, but undeniable. "I cannot, Dad. Not fully. My path, it has diverged." She watched their faces, seeing the struggle, the heartache, but surprisingly a flicker of understanding, a love so deep it transcended even their community's rigid strictures. The following morning dawned in a soft, muted palette of grays and purples, mirroring Sarah's internal landscape. The air was crisp, carrying the earthy scent of dew-kissed grass. Her small wooden trunk, containing the few belongings she'd brought from the city, rested by the front door. Her family gathered, their faces a blend of sorrow and resigned affection. Her mam embraced her tightly, the familiar aroma of lavender and starch a comforting anchor. "Be well, my child," she whispered, her voice choked with tears. "Always remember where you came from." Her dad placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm. "God go with you, Sarah. Make a good life." His eyes held a depth of emotion she had rarely witnessed, a silent blessing and a profound farewell. Her younger siblings clung to her, their innocent faces bewildered by the gravity, yet sensing the immense shift. She hugged each of them, imprinting the feel of their small bodies, the scent of their hair, knowing these moments must sustain her through a long, unknown absence. As she stepped onto the dusty path leading away from the farm, away from the life she had always known, the rising sun cast long shadows before her, charting her course. The familiar mosaic of rolling fields and distant barns began to recede, shrinking with each step. A deep ache settled in her chest, a physical manifestation of the tearing away. Yet, beneath the sorrow, a fragile bud of hope unfurled. She was choosing love. She was choosing a future where she could continue to learn, to grow, to be herself without reservation. She envisioned David, his warm smile, his patient eyes, the way he listened. She thought of their shared adventures, the quiet comfort of his presence, the vibrant life they could forge together. This path, though new and daunting, was not walked alone. It was a path chosen not out of defiance, but from the deepest stirrings of her heart, a commitment to a love that had opened her world. She carried her heritage within her, not as a burden, but as a foundation, an intrinsic part of who she was, even as she reached for a new horizon. The journey ahead was uncertain, but it was hers, and for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt truly, irrevocably alive.